Hello and welcome to the very first Back Pocket Game Club. The Game Club is where we pick one title each month. We play through the whole title on stream, which many of you guys will have seen. And then we do a special show at the end of each month where we go deep on that title. Full spoilers. We discuss everything. This could be 40 minutes long. We could be here all night. So it's time to settle in. I, of course, am Nick, and I'm joined by Gus Ronald, Stephanie Ben-Dixon,
Hi.
and Peter Burns.
That's me.
The three people who, if I was to open my marriage up to more marriages, you are three of the people that I would contend to bring
It
into that
takes
relationship.
4, apparently.
Well, 5.
Or 5. 5 too.
Yeah,
Good point. Okay. To satisfy Nick, it takes 5.
Honestly, it takes 5 to raise 2 kids, so that would be really helpful. And the April Back Pocket Game Club title that we picked is, of course, It Takes Two, the co-op adventure platformer developed by Haze Light Studios. But it does not take two to sponsor this episode. In fact, it only took one, and that was Timothy Chu, Pocketeer, self-described builder of worlds and designer of avatars, which seems like a very appropriate sponsored job description for this month's game.
If I had to pick a Pocketeer to play this game with me instead of you, I would choose Timothy.
Oh, my goodness.
Lovely.
See what I did there?
I love it.
I don't get it.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you, Timothy.
Thank you very much, Timothy Chu, for sponsoring the Back Pocket Game Club. We hope it's a very special episode for you. All right, It Takes Two. So a co-op adventure game about a couple about to get a divorce who are transformed into dolls by a magical therapy book and must work together to get back to their daughter. The leads on this game this month were the couple among us, Peter and Steph. You streamed the entire game on our Twitch page. Was that an enjoyable experience?
Yeah, I think that was the first time we'd streamed anything together, like side by side, playing. And it's been a long time since we've played a game together in that sense. Like we've played, I guess, some multiplayer games together before, but like it's been a long time since we've played one game start to finish, just us in co-op.
Yeah, and I think there's something like about a puzzle game to play in co-op that's nicer than playing like a Halo co-op or something like that, where it's like, oh, let's just monster our way through this, or even there's a bit of competition in like who's doing the most for the team.
And that would have been probably Destiny for you guys because you were cooperatively playing through campaigns. But you're right, you're rushing ahead. You're trying to get as many kills as you can versus doing anything. I mean, there is puzzle solving, but not to the extent that you.
Yeah, and we were rarely in Destiny like just the two of us. It was usually a big group.
So let's see if your guys' relationships fared as well as Cody and Maze.
There's not much to dick around with. Should we start playing the game?
Well, that's his whole attitude to everything, and you'll see more of that as we progress. Can we get a poll in chat if we can have some dicking around is appreciated?
If we can have some dick.
Don't let go.
Head on through.
Well, I don't trust you.
Well, we're not going to do it twice, am I? Never 5 years. Well, look at that. It's now this fighting game. Oh, and I've still got to fly.
Hey, no.
What is this? There's a freaking Stargate. What the hell is going on here?
Oh, momentum.
Oh my goodness.
That's amazing. That was a weak high five. You're doing it on purpose now, Peter.
Let's destroy something Rose loves to make her cry.
What? These people are fucking sickos.
No.
Let's destroy something she loves.
She's got a science brain. She's like, no emotion. This is how we solve this issue.
It's a fucking dungeon crawly booty fucking.
What?
Yes, we've got 3 spells each. It's just so fun.
Fuck inverted. Look at my score compared to yours.
I fucking nailed that. Oh. This is the Hell Tower. Shit. No. Just chill. The tower's optional. We gotta move together. 5, 6,
Oh my
you
God.
recovered. We're there. Holy shit.
I can't believe I recovered from that.
I'm gonna murder this fucking elephant so hard.
Oh my God, this is so messed up.
No, this is fucked.
This is so shit. Oh my God, this is awful. We've learned nothing.
Oh, we're gonna pull it fucking ear off.
Fuck, man, no.
This is fucking.
No. Don't kill those pigs.
Well, now I want to.
Stop it. No, Peter. Can you play chess? Scotty. Is it dinner time?
Oh, we're down the shaft on the right.
Yeah,
Let's do right ball.
I get you.
That looks like a testicle.
Fucking just penguin.
Penguins.
Penguin.
So hold A once you're in to get that extra height.
Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me.
Rude.
One of us has to get to the other side!
Ah.
Oh, it fucking moves, Peter.
It fucking moves. I'll push and you pull. Oh no, I push and you push. We were fighting against each other because I'm an idiot. Nope.
That was,
Holy
an
shit.
experiment.
It was an experiment going wrong.
Yes, it failed.
cost us
but
much.
how
Leave.
did anyone achieve anything without a failure? This has been my favorite part of the game. No thanks to you.
No thanks to you. Marriage.
Marriage brings us together and love. Woo.
Well, we're surfing
Where
the
am I?
shaft.
I keep looking at you.
Can you just not look at me, please?
Fuck you, game.
I can see what's happening,
What?
and they don't have a clue.
Who?
They'll fall in love, and here's the bottom line. Our trio's down to 2. Oh.
Man, I had that on cassette. And I smashed that in my Sony Walkman like you would not believe.
Hell yeah.
I think what we learned from that is you guys are just a fucking cute couple.
So cute.
Adorable. God.
I said I saw you get married, and that was cuter. I'm singing Lion King at the end. Oh man.
We had fun.
I'm literally having a text message argument with my partner right now. You guys sitting over there, big old couple goals. All right, I want to start off our nuanced, in-depth discussion of this game by being entirely reductive.
Yeah.
Pete, out of 10, how many terrifying husk-like parents lying around the house would you give this game?
7. Good night, everybody.
7 out of 10.
No, this is like if you had to put a number to it, and I always hated doing this.
Yep.
It's a 9-ish to me. Yeah.
Steph?
I would probably give it 10. There's not, I can't think of anything that I would change except for maybe the ending, but that's kind of like a story choice that I feel like doesn't let down in any way the experience that I had leading up to that. And for me, it's Game of the Year.
Oh my god!
I mean, it's very early. It's very early.
exciting.
I have not played anything like this in such a long time that I've been so like pleasantly surprised at every moment.
Yeah.
Angus.
Ditto. 100%. 10 out of 10.
Amazing.
I mean, I
Do you want to give me a really awesome, solid high five? Yes.
that was much better.
Lame.
Although I gave I gave less numbered reviews in my history of any working around game. So I used to fly pretty I'd be up or down the scale. I'd be, it's a 10 or a 1. So
They're the Mario and Luigi dream team. Of course it's a 10.
it's a 10.
I'm sitting on like 8.5, getting to a 9.
Yeah, okay.
That's, like, I'm
Did we not have fun? Is that what you're saying?
That was the one. No. We had a lot. We saw how much fun you guys had. You and I had a ton of fun playing this game.
We really
it was
did.
so satisfying. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, so you guys played together side by side. We played online together, so jumped on chat, and it was like a really lovely way to both.
Which one of you played Cody and who played May?
I was Cody, he was May.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And
What did you play as?
I was May. and
You
he
were
was
May?
Cody.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I did say when we started, May looked the most like Nick. He's got his like wiry glasses, his hair goes up.
Just a
really
mop of
high.
hair.
And I was like, yeah,
Great singing voice.
Yeah, exactly. But it was, as an experience, I don't think I've played an online co-op game on console the whole way through with voice chat. I mean, you and I did A Way Out, but we're on PC. Not that it makes a huge difference, but it was a really comforting thing. It was like, plop on the couch, headphones on, and just like, or sneak away in the middle of the night and be like, I have an hour.
That's what it mainly was.
I loved that. I love that you had to come together.
Clandestine.
Yeah.
So before we get into the meat of the game, I just thought it would be worth looking back at Hazelight as a studio because they're basically a developer who have carved out a really interesting niche in the industry of going, we're going to heavily focus on story, but we are really doubling down on the idea of co-op and co-op that you have to play as co-op, no AI buddies and whatever. Steph, what are your feelings towards their previous title, A Way Out, or I guess including Joseph Fares, the game director? He was director on
Brother, A Tale of Two
Sons, which is not a co-op game, but is a co-op game at the same time.
Yeah. I played them both. I feel like those were definitely kind of proving grounds for what became their kind of opus, which is this. Like, A Way Out was a cool concept. They had an idea of a prison break and people having to two players having to rely on each other to be able to successfully escape the prison. But I don't feel like there were really many moments in that experience where I was like, oh, this is super clever, or what I'm doing right now is like unlike anything I've ever seen before. I enjoyed it as a game, and I enjoyed the fact that I love that they kind of really are committed to this idea of creating fun cooperative experiences, because there's like not a lot of that out there of this nature. And I feel like It Takes Two just is the most wonderful culmination of all of that work, of all of these ideas that they've kind of toyed with. They've created something that just was, for me, constantly surprising. There were so many mechanics in there that I'd never seen before or never seen used in that particular way. And I can't remember the last time I played a game where I was consistently so surprised and delighted with everything that they threw at you. So I feel like it's nice to see that evolution, but like those first two games feel like is a huge leap between those first two and this one in terms of quality and cleverness.
Yeah.
It's a strange evolution from A Way Out. And the only thing I would say there is that it feels like in any other traditional game development timeline, you would have made this first as your kind of like, hey, it's a creative, throw everything in and go crazy with every mechanic. And then the developer's like, the story I really wanted to tell was this really hard-boiled,
gritty
drilled
story.
down prison break film, which it's less fun, but it's more directed. Whereas like, it's really strange that was the one they did to, I'd say a decent amount of success, and I enjoyed playing it as well. But yeah, you're right. There are those moments that do not rely on the co-op. It's just taking two people through the same game.
Yeah.
And so then to do this as the like let all of it out is a really interesting progression. I loved it.
Yeah, I think the thing that worked maybe even better in A Way Out than in this, and there aren't many things that work better in A Way Out, but A Way Out was interesting because I'd never played a game where there were two protagonists that were equally as important, right? Like you've got Joel and Ellie, you've got like partner games, but you only play as one of them. And in A Way Out, there's two different people playing these two different protagonists who have mostly aligned goals, but not through to the end. And that's where it becomes interesting, is where these like stories that this game that you're kind of like, you've been gelled together for this whole game, and the story causes some friction there.
Yeah.
And like there's friction obviously between Cody and May, but I think the game itself is always about you working cooperatively for the narrative's sake, whereas the narrative A Way Out asks you to like go against your character's wants and needs.
There's conflict directly between them. Yeah. You're right. It was a far more cinematic experience.
I was going to say,
even the way it was all framed.
Yeah.
Quite literally, they were doing it like
it was much less of a game, I feel like, than
Yeah.
it was. So, but I think you're totally right. It's weird that they went from making a film style thing to making a game, and normally we see the opposite. It's like, oh, I used to work on Ratchet and Clank, and now I've made
part 3.
Yeah, Murder Your Family Simulator.
It's so true. I think I remember when we were playing, Peter, you were saying things like it's almost like they had one of those big kind of like game jam sort of dev sessions where they were like, come up with whatever you could think of, like no idea is off the table. And it's like they took all of those ideas
literally all ideas
and put them in the game, whether it worked as a cohesive experience or not, and found a way to kind of tie them all together, because it feels like such a sandbox of creativity.
What's driving you to the narrative? Talking Love Book? Talking Love Book.
And I guess that's a good segue with the movie thing, because what was interesting about the marketing around this game initially was that it kind of pitched itself as a romantic comedy. I feel like we don't see that very often with video games, of using story or like film or storytelling wrapper. Like, you describe GTA as an open world game like an open world shooter or something, rather than an epic crime story. But this game sort of took that to step forward of going, no, we're like a rom-com. So how is that going to translate as a video game? The story is probably the part where I have seen, definitely within the Pocketeer community, like real division in terms of how well it executed that. Everyone seems pretty aligned that the gameplay was really fun, but the story, people have taken either side. Gus, how, like, you could start us off. How effective do you feel like It Takes Two story and comedy rom-com sort of gel together?
Yeah, I would say they're both standalone as very good. I enjoyed the humor in it. I love the writing. I thought the acting performances were great. And the narrative itself is something that's used to string this whole series of events together. I felt was compelling in the sense that, yes, you've got the immediate story of these two people who have been transformed into dolls who are just trying to find a solution to get out of their current situation. But of course, the subtext of that is them learning to get along. And in that sense, it's like, I wouldn't say it's overly complicated or anything. And I really enjoyed that. I would say that I enjoyed that it took a backseat because there is so much game there to play. So I liked that it wasn't heavy-handed. I think we even joked as we played about like metaphors and they were sort of not tongue-in-cheek, but they were enjoying dancing around that stuff, being like, you get it. Like, we're not going to sit here and have the characters come to these realizations. So I really appreciated that. I thought I was happy to not see them really like force those story beats. But yeah, I think therefore there will maybe as I said, we'll get to this later, but my only criticism is really like nailing that finish, which is tough, or nailing the landing. But for the rest of it, I think it was lovely how hands-off story-wise it was. And it was just like, I mean, the final thing I'll say is that just some of the situations you find yourself in, both as characters, with abilities, with side characters, in environments that you would just never put all these things together, to try and make the story super to make you constantly be questioning how you are getting from one situation to the next, would do a disservice to the game. It was lovely how it just leads into a fairy tale, so to speak. And I found that really enjoyable. And yeah, I guess the comedy and as you said, the romantic comedy side of it is just, that works well for a light-hearted setting, so to speak. But yeah, I was surprised. We laughed at a lot more. And I will say, sorry, I've been ranting, but the one thing is, I laughed more because I was with someone as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It was such an interesting way to experience not just gameplay mechanics, but story beats where I would laugh or make a comment, and I genuinely laughed. It's not like I'm faking it, but it's what you do when you're around other people, is you laugh audibly, opposed to if you played a game by yourself. You would, at best... Not even that, but
Your lip might curl.
Yeah, but that makes you feel better or enjoy something more. Did you guys? I mean, you guys
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was wonderful to have those moments of delight and surprise with someone else next to you, or maybe there were things that you kind of didn't, because you are small in a really big world. You're seeing a lot of really wonderful details in the environment, but by the same token, you can kind of miss stuff because you are small and it is big, and you don't quite see the bigger picture. And so it's nice to have someone else there with you to point out things that...
Or yell at, those two glow sticks are cuddling.
Yeah, which you
I think they totally missed it. I'm like, look, those two glow sticks are making out. If you played the game, obviously, you know what I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
things like that are worth commenting on too.
Or when you're in an environment, you're kind of running off in different directions. And like, yeah, I mean, I would say I agree with you mostly on the story front. I think like for me, this is like such an unlikely pick for me for something that I would choose as Game of the Year, because like, you know, I tend to favor realism, and I like, you know, RPGs, and I like big sort of action adventure sort of story experiences where the story is kind of like front and center. For me, the story was totally secondary. I liked that it was there to kind of, you know, be the through line for their journey, but so much so that the ending, like, while I have opinions on it, it kind of became irrelevant. I feel like for me, the game itself and the journey that I had as a player with another player was the real hero, and what left me feeling so elated afterwards, as opposed to like where these characters ended up.
And just quickly, like, I assume you speculate together as well as you're playing. You talk out loud about the thoughts you'd have playing this solo, being like, I wonder if they're going to do this with the story, or I wonder if these characters might find them going in this way or that way, which I love doing because it's what I do in movies, and people tell me to shut up. So I really appreciated having a sounding
Play
board
this game
here
with him.
to like had that discussion midway through. We're like, do you think they're going to not get back together or get back together? And or do you think this is all a dream and they're not going to remember it? And just things that, again,
Oh yeah, I had those thoughts.
having
too.
those thoughts
Yeah.
solo playing a game, you just don't sort of work them through in the same way that you would with another person to either bounce off or talk back to
It
you
was
kind of thing.
very strange that there were just two husk parents lying around a house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Souls.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
was terrifying.
Yes.
Like all the scenes with Rose going up to them and like talking to them while they're unconscious.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm profoundly disturbed.
This is a horror movie now.
It's in a very, very deep sleep.
Her putting on the backpack at the end is kind of like, well, I guess I stay and die or I leave.
Or I go fend for myself in the wild.
Exactly.
I found the pacing of the story, like you've both said that the story was unimportant, and I can't help but see that as a mark against it because it pins
I'm not
everything.
saying it's unimportant,
Yeah,
but I'm
I
just
didn't
saying
say that
it
either.
wasn't at the front of this experience.
Sure, but I think like you don't care that it ended badly, but that's a problem.
I do.
And you care that it ended badly, but you also were like, I don't care how the story is told because you were focused on the mechanics and it's fun to play.
No, that's not what I said at
You-
all.
you
I
did say
enjoyed
that.
that the story took a back seat and then
Back
found
seat.
its moments to come through, but weren't constantly diving in with like this story. They're forcing the story in, either, be it more cutscenes or be it
Sure.
more forced dialogue.
I had a problem with that because I felt like it wasn't a good structure to the story. To me, we were halfway through the game before they stopped being snarky assholes to each other. For like, I couldn't relate to either of them. They weren't characters. They weren't actually having conversations with each other. It just felt like video game dialogue for dialogue's sake. And that really annoyed me that we were like about halfway through before they had a conversation. Every word that came out of their mouths before that was just like to push the narrative forward because they're like, oh, a cute bee, or to like throw little snide remarks at each other. And I would have preferred, I think, to see a more traditional like 3-act structure to at least the evolution of their relationship, which I felt was there was nothing happening. Then all of a sudden it was a slow mend all the way to the end. And then it just ended really quickly. There wasn't like an understanding earlier on or any effort from either of them early on, which I
you're
felt
right.
like
Or maybe they're back together entirely, then a massive misunderstanding like a sort of a romantic comedy would have.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
third act something there that makes the stakes a little bit higher than you're right. It was strange when they chose their moments to be friendly and snarky, and sometimes they would be friendly to each other, and then there'd be another snarky comment later, and you're like, I'm not really sure, as like an in-game line of dialogue.
which I think is fair that's how humans work, but it's not necessarily how storytelling should work. And I felt like that was what was missing from the story because I loved the game, but I felt like there weren't those beats. Like I don't remember any story beats except maybe the cabin in the snow.
Yeah.
and then it was over, and it was like, did these guys really mend a relationship?
I think
we
that
just
stuff,
were told they were.
I think the stuff of like where they start learning their lessons kicks in when the game's story takes on a bit more of a like classic video game structure where that fucking book like goes.
Yeah, sure.
You need the 4
you've got this
pages.
letter and you need the 4 pieces of this to come. Like that's when they like he's actually talking them through like work together on this thing. Whereas when they're in the tree, it's like the tree section was them just working together with the gun and the sap and the exploding. That stuff wasn't like that was just the thematic them working together was the story driver. Whereas the second half of the game was like magnetism. This is something you need in a relationship. Like listening to each other. This is something you need in a relationship.
Yeah, and I think they were really horrible to each other for the first like half, and I agree that the pacing of it didn't really move in a way that made it feel like they had learnt enough to fix their relationship. But I also feel like it was more about them kind of understanding and appreciating what they bring to each other's lives and what they bring to their family as parents and stuff like that by, seeing each other's strengths and weaknesses. And that's why I think that was why it was important to have all the stuff about finding your passion at the end and seeing the other person for maybe not necessarily who they are, but who they kind of wanted to be and lost their way a little bit, both in life and in the relationship and stuff like that. So I don't know. I feel like it wasn't so bad.
There is that funny divide now, I think back on it, if you're right, there's sort of them trying to get, it's all the way up until the elephant, which we'll talk about. But up until that point, I think, if I think about it, the character's motivation is entirely their decision of what they want to do. And the book is kind of just there to come along with them. And then that's the point where the game says, no, here are your 4
active mending.
Here are your sections you need to do. And it's almost like the game could have been just there and onwards. But therefore I'm not going to have a go at not enjoying the first half or the first third, I guess, of the game. But it is strange that at that point the book steps in and says, okay, here's what you need to fix. I'm going to put you in that little fantasy area where it's couples therapy on a couch, and it literally transports them to a fantasy realm. So it takes on more of a video game.
I do
vibe.
think, though, the idea there is because the first half of the game, they're not listening to each other. Yeah. They're working together, but then, fuck the book. But if we take the book as, completely... a realistic thing, he could not impart those lessons on them at the beginning of the game because they're not ready to hear them.
Yeah.
It's not until they've worked together for a while and have gotten to a point where they're not doing all they do is bicker that they can now be receptive to those ideas.
Or they work together to do the wrong thing.
Yes,
what they
exactly.
decide.
Yeah,
they work
and
out.
so this was interesting for me because I'm there's not many video games that tackle divorce as a topic. And I was thinking about it and I was like, well, the funny thing is all 3 of you never lived through a divorce. And that's I'm like, that's so weird because I lived through so many divorces.
That's true.
My entire childhood is defined by multiple divorces and constant moving between parents and moving house and all that. This idea of this subject matter, for me, I was like, oh, this is a totally different thing, I guess, for me than it might be for you guys. And then on top of that, I am in a long-term relationship and have kids. And I'm not, we're really happy. We're not getting divorced. But the interesting thing that I feel like the game didn't quite nail, there's a lot, the interaction, I've seen a lot of discussion. These thoughts might be messy. I'm still trying to figure this out. But I've seen a lot of discussion in the Discord from people saying that they thought that the relationship between the parents and the child was really unhealthy, that the parents were ignoring the child a lot. I almost feel like it was potentially a mistake to put the child in the game because it's it's created this relationship where the game is focusing on these guys, but they're not realizing that they're part of a trio. So the way that they interact with their child, whether it's by ignoring her, there's stuff in the game where they're we didn't realize that she was unhappy or she stopped laughing and that sort of thing. And it's that's adding this extra wrinkle to it. But in terms of the relationship thing, the actual thing when oftentimes the actual thing when long-term relationships break down, and particularly when you have kids, is the thing that we've gone through in our relationship with kids is I often am well, remember when we used to do X, or we used to be like this, or this is how we acted to each other, blah, blah, blah. And going, you can't necessarily go back there because your life is actually different. Not only have you been in a relationship for a long time together, but you have children. So you can't go back to that thing. And I feel quite often in this game, even though for most of the time I didn't have a problem with the story, it did seem to be a lot of, remember the book basically going, remember how you used to be. You just need to get back to that. And I'm for me, that's not quite right. It's not about going back to how you used to be. It's about how you can work together with the way that things are now. And the biggest thing that Cody and May didn't have for each other was, I felt empathy and kindness to each other, of going, well, it's okay if you fuck this up, or I will give you the space that you need to have your own time, or I will just listen to your complaints and that sort of thing. In terms of, that's the stuff that in my relationship, I have had to learn to do a lot more, is stop thinking about how it used to be before you had kids, even though you adore your children, and start going, okay, yes, 90% of our day is taken up with all this chores and constant work and being at 11. you need to find the moments in the 10% where you can be a couple and capitalize on those moments then. So for me, I was like, and I know that's when I was growing up, a lot of the divorce happened because like my parents they both split away from each other and went internal, as opposed to like having that empathy for each other. And the game, I think the game expressed that pretty well, but a lot of the time the game also went, hey, just remember your passion. And it's like, sure, but like it's fucking hard to remember your passion when one of you works full time and the other one is looking after the kid and there's dentist appointments and all that sort of thing. So yeah, for me, that was kind of where I was like, but then the other part of that is like, this is also a game that's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be light. Like how
They
much
can only go so far.
how much
with
of an
this.
examination of divorce do you actually want represented in a game where you also are like, it's so much fucking fun riding this love heart boxer short plane. Like,
I feel like they went as deep into it as they probably could. Because conceptualize for the game that they wanted to make or the experience that they wanted to have. I agree with you. Maybe the stuff with the child was kind of handled not great, particularly because it does feel like they were kind of neglecting her as parents. You could argue that they were their focus was getting back to her as quickly as possible, and so were blinded by anything else. But I don't know. I feel like the stuff about finding your passion, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I can understand that they've tried to simplify the problems in their relationship down to the fact that she's really obsessed with work and is not sort of factoring in anything about her as a person or what brings joy to her life, and has become kind of bitter as a result. And he obviously like puts more work into their home life and stuff, but isn't appreciated for what he does, and also has kind of lost his way with the things that he kind of cares about that makes him a more well-rounded individual.
Yeah.
So I think they've done the best that they could with this particular story without kind of making it like actual real world therapy of an actual breakup, which feels like it would be too heavy for the
I feel like removing the child would have done a lot to just like remove some of the third consideration in like a emotionally dependent triangle. So that would have been like my biggest thing, because then you just don't need to consider that at all. But I think wading into the idea of like parenting and divorce also brings like, I've never been in a situation where I've tried to discover an ancient Aztec tomb, and so therefore when I play Tomb Raider, I'm like, well, I've never been in this scenario, so like, but like I've been in plenty of scenarios where like parents have been fighting and I felt like I'm left out of the loop or they're not thinking of me or something. So I bring a lot of emotional attachment to something that's actually like quite light, and I think that they're wading into like a very messy water there.
I think we'll come back to the ending as well. Just that idea of like who they are when they leave or when the credits roll. They're back to the family. They don't. They're not a new trio. They're not a hey, we've brought all this healthy. I mean, they say they do, but they don't look like they're returning home.
They don't give enough time for there to be growth.
No, none at all.
They come to a realization and suddenly everything's fine, as opposed to everything's in a position now where they have a chance to mend. It's like, it's mended.
And even the throwaway dialogue at the end is just kind of cute. It's not like, hey, that's why we're going to be different from now on. Or like, hey, they don't really reassure her in the way that I'd like, or at least not in enough lines of dialogue. It is quite literally like 4 lines and then the credits roll.
Yeah. But in terms of like how the comedy sits in among it being a romantic comedy, how the comedy fits in with it, I thought all the comedy was really fun, but I feel like most of the time it worked really well. I feel like sometimes it played against the story a bit in that it kind of juxtaposed the messaging of the game by just being like, they always play the joke over anything else.
Yeah.
Which I think worked for the most part, but I think that's why the story fails at points.
Are we talking about Cutie the elephant?
Cutie the elephant obviously is like the traumatic moment where it's like that's played for obviously the shock value, but it's shock comedy.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing is played as a bit, and it's funny. It is funny. Like it's fun. It's funny to do.
Not since The Last of Us 2
Yeah.
have I hated my actions in
Wow.
video games so much.
See, I agree. I thought
Don't do it. Oh, God, no.
A golf club, not on the elephant.
it's kind of like if you remove the idea of what they're doing in terms of like trying to make their daughter cry, and I've seen people have a problem with that, but also I'm like, well, if I'm in that scenario and she cried on the dolls and I turned into a doll, potentially her crying on the dolls again would do more magic. So if I'm like, well, if the choice is make my daughter cry and I can get back to life and feed her and live with her for the rest of my life, or die as a doll, I'm going to make my child
And my
cry.
daughter will then, like, perish as she's got just husk parents lying around.
But I thought it was very funny.
I thought it was funny too. I feel like people who are just going like hard on this wasn't funny and this was a bad choice and divorce is too sensitive a subject matter. I think that's a bit too like dramatic a view to take. This was a fun co-op game, and yes, it's around the breakup of a relationship. Plenty of romantic comedies have been based around the breakup of a relationship that they're trying to sort of bring people back together, and I think it was really incredible the way they've tried to do that.
Yeah, they should be commended as well for bringing a topic like divorce into video games, where I think the only other examples I can think of are probably your kind of, I haven't played all of them, but like your Life is Strangers or your like...
Which is definitely more
They're definitely
serious.
Yeah, they are there to
Weighing the
entirely
consequences.
just dwell on the negative, or not just negative, but to really dive into the issues that come with it. Versus here, it's like they, as I said, should be commended for putting it with fun game at the same time.
Yeah, and the whole thing of like trying to make the girl cry. The point was to kind of see that was obviously the wrong decision.
Yeah.
But they weren't able to see past their own desire to just solve the problem as quickly
Break
as
out of their
possible.
own thing.
And get away from each
and
other.
get away from each other.
Totally.
That was part of the kind of learning experiences that they were too blinded by their own kind of focus, inward focus on themselves, to be able to see a bigger picture that is solving this problem by solving the issues with each other and their family.
But how it played out, like, I genuinely was laughing so much of just even the voice of Cutie is just like the sweetest little thing. And as that ear gets like nailed with the screwdriver, like I was like, this is like, you've walked into again, you've just waded into this like a bit fraught territory and you're trying it felt like they were trying their best to navigate it, but you've put this scene in there where they're like, this will be funny. And a lot of people on the internet were like, no, this fucking sucks.
And then forgetting that right at the end when the daughter does, I was like, I thought it was going to go wrong in a way that didn't lead to the result they wanted. Not that they would make their daughter cry. To then give us the scene of two puppets like happily bathing in their daughter's tears, going, oh, yeah. I'm like, that was the moment where I was like, everything up until here has been played for yucks. That's the bit where I was like, this is funny, but for the really worst reason. You're watching like a little plasticine man be like, no,
The whole game was totally absurd, and I think that those moments of absurdity were
and
great.
it got there in a great way because I remember talking at one point being like, we're in the house, right? Yeah. And then it's like, hang on, we're not in the house anymore. When I think sort of you leave the basement and then suddenly you're in a fantasy, not in a fantasy area, but such a like.
Oh, there's a few parts where you're like, I don't know what pipe you came out of.
It's definitely fantasy, not high fantasy, but it's a fantastic place. Like,
but the size of the scope of the areas and stuff you're in, you're like, this is ridiculous. This is beyond.
Yeah.
We're not in a house anymore. We've been traveling through pipes through the back of a kaleidoscope or something.
Yeah.
And they just get there without a way that ever makes you go like, this is silly now. It's like, it was such a nice progression. I thought that was what
And so then, like, we've spoken about the ending. Like, Pete, how did the ending land for you? Like, do you feel like that Cody and May fixed it and should be together?
Look, I was hoping that there would be a more. It's a despite the color and shininess of it, it's an adult game, and I was hoping they would treat the ending a bit more adult. To me, the whole thing gets caught up in, like, I think the kindest you can be to it is that the fantasy that they just lived through, bled into the real world, and now they have this fantasy ending. And I think if you can look at it that way, then you can probably appreciate the ending. For me, it was like, they've lived through this fantasy, but they've come back to reality, and the reality should be more complicated than it's fine now. So I would have loved to see. I was really happy that they started to bend the relationship by the end. They were having conversations that were empathetic, and they were having conversations that were respectful to each other. But there was not enough payoff to that of them coming to that realization that they can be a team still, rather than just being fine now.
Happy family.
Yeah.
I feel like I think I sort of flip-flopped the whole way through as we were wondering how they were going to sort of treat the ending.
Like if they were going to get together.
Yeah, I was like, I wonder if they are going to get back together or if they're going to be like, look, the realistic scenario in this is that like they need to learn to respect each other as parents and stuff, but and they'll be amicable and work together well as a family, but that doesn't necessarily involve them getting back together.
Yeah.
And then I
situation or something.
Yeah, and then I kind of like wasn't sure. I think they did try to leave it slightly ambiguous at the end, but the fact that they kissed took away from that, which is why when I was sort of after we had done it, I was like, oh, there was a button for us to kiss, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that was a choice, and so I was like, we've got to tell Nick and Gus not to kiss.
Guess
Well,
what?
we
You
nearly
didn't
got
need-
there.
Because purely and
You went to the bathroom?
not as a bit. I kept seeing the prompt to hold to move forward, and I would hold it until it would disappear, and then that for me made me go, oh, well, I'll stop doing it,
Yeah.
and I let go. Now I don't see Nick's prompt the whole time,
Yeah.
So I just assumed I was controlling, and then it's
So May keeps leaning in. Cody just leads a bit and then starts pulling away.
That's
and then like
fucking gold.
I would leave it would have disappeared, and then I'd take my finger off the button, and after a few seconds it would come back up, and I'd go, oh, again. I was following prompts. I wasn't just holding it down hoping that they
But it was a mash. Like every other time
was a
that
hold.
symbol
It was a
came
hold.
up.
There was a hold.
Was it a hold for that
it was a
one?
hold.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
So I'd hold, and then it would go away, and I'd let go. So I just ruined the moment. Like I do with
But
all-
regardled, there was no choice in that moment.
it just holds.
No.
It just-
Yeah,
It just
because I
went
realized
on
like I
forever.
was like that would have been probably the coolest thing is that you let the player choose if they want the
Yeah.
relationship to continue, or there was an option that they don't get back together and you watch a really nice kind of amicable
Yeah. They
ending
hold hands
play out.
instead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
get your liar ending where they don't get back together, Jim Carrey, but then they celebrate the kid's birthday a year later, and then the parents are kind of like, hey, and it's like, so the film
And then the kid
ends
blows
in
the
a way-
candle out, and
they
then they're
kiss it?
kissing at the end.
Oh yeah, okay, forget that one.
I feel like, well, because I definitely felt like there was no way they weren't getting back together because, and I've said it before today, but like, I think that it's not a story about parenting. I think that the child is there and the child is an afterthought. It's a story about a relationship and the idea, and it's not trying to tell the story of like, oh, you don't need to be in an unhappy relationship. It's trying to tell the story of like, it's easy to forget or lose your way in a relationship. And so I was like, they're definitely going to get back together, because otherwise, like, what is the story it's trying to tell? Like, you were in a long-term relationship and you got happy, and then you managed to become friends again but break up. At the end of that, I'm like, all right, like,
Yeah,
what the fuck story is that? Like, sure, that's the healthy thing for real life, but as a narrative, I'm like, at the end of a movie, I'm not like, I'm glad that they ended up like splitting up after this whole game was about, will they get back together?
Well, then,
like,
see, that's where I joked before, but I wouldn't have minded that energy of, look, they've come to an agreement where, not an agreement, they've come to an understanding.
This contract's been signed.
There's still love there, but it's like, and they can see it under the surface, and there's a lot more work for them to do. Not, it's all solved in that short amount
Yeah,
of time.
totally.
That's what I actually
For me,
was really hoping.
same. Yeah, I wanted them to be together, but I wanted it to feel
Totally.
grounded,
Yes,
and it
yeah.
felt fantasy.
And-
so that was what.
because they both were like, we're going to get a divorce, and
Yeah.
then the book turned up and was like, no, you're
no, you're not.
And you're actually spot on just thinking it through in my head there. If the girl had gone to school that morning and they'd had
Yeah,
that whole
totally.
adventure during the day,
Yeah.
and then she comes home sad thinking they're going to get divorced, and they're kind of like, I don't know, like, and the story ends.
That's
like,
a great
that's
solve,
kind
because Phoenix Online in the chat earlier said like, but if they don't have the child, like, what's the impetus for their relationship to fall apart? Which I think is a very negative look at what children are like. But that's so true, that you wouldn't have any of the interaction with the child
But
where they're like
you have-
ignoring her as a person. But yeah, totally,
something like that. And just to add to
But
that,
she still exists as part of
But
the
she
family.
still exists as part of the family.
and
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
I shouldn't do this. I do it in films and everything. I set up what I would like to happen, and then when it doesn't meet that, I get like, oh, I would have preferred it this way.
Yeah.
And for me, the double
This is a
punch-
10 out of 10, though.
10 out of 10. Yeah, 10 out of 10 game. The double punch for me was them coming out of their, let's call it fantasy comas, and both being like, oh my God, but the thing we just went through. I thought it might have done that thing where they kind of wake up groggy and are like, something's different about us.
I was also
can't quite
hoping
put
for
my
that.
finger on it, and looking at items in the house and being kind of like, what's going on? But the fact they come out, they're like, oh, we're no longer dolls, woohoo, and they run off.
Yeah.
Like for me, that felt, like I didn't like that.
Totally. That was like, to me, that was the solve to grounding that ending, was that they come out of these coma states with
Fantasy coma
states with an subconscious understanding
Yes.
to start to try and respect each other. And all I wanted to really see in that moment was them going like, hey, you feeling all right? Or something kind of where they showed empathy to each other, where we never saw that at the start. And that's all the clue I need to go like, cool, they're on the mend.
And that allows-
They've learned the lesson and they're
Yeah.
going to start applying it going forward.
And then, that does then perfectly play into the idea of how you should leave stories. It's often for the audience to either interpret what they want out of it, or to speculate, ponder, just keep
imply that there's more that's going to happen after this, other
Totally.
than just like a perfect
And
life.
therefore, there are
yeah.
people I'm sure who were like, just God, I want them to get back together. They might have been through things, and seeing a couple, heal all of that might have made them feel great. That would have solved that problem. There are people who, like we all kind of said, we thought the way it's handled, like there's a lot of relationships out there that it's probably better that they split up and become really amicable and like still love the children, but do it in a way that puts the kids out of the harm of a bad relationship. And so for those people, they could take that from that ending as well. Like it gives you the flexibility for your audience to draw more from it than just here is our
Yeah,
we've
I
chosen.
think what was missing for me, because I still kind of am like doggedly clinging to the idea that they tried to deliberately leave it a bit ambiguous. I would have loved to have just had a line for them where they're like, we've got a lot of work to do. And that implies that, they have a lot of work to do on their relationship, and that means getting back together or just getting to a place where they're comfortable with each other.
They should have been
as
like,
parents.
we need a book.
Still apart.
We need to buy a book.
Yeah,
They just needed to walk through the living room, and one of them picks up the snow globe, and they kind of laugh and like, you remember the ski trip, kind of without saying anything, just a knowing look to each other.
Like, or
Yeah.
something would have been like,
remember that? Yeah.
We got lots of tons of great chat in the Discord. I just want to point out a couple of people. Sickney said that I think I would have preferred the story veered away from themselves, but moving to realize their behavior was affecting their child, and they were too caught up in themselves to consider Rose's feelings, which ties in nicely to them carelessly destroying her toy for their own reasons. That way you can keep the same ending, but have it more thematically line up. And I think Gus's thing potentially solves a lot of that. And then also Violet Wind said, I think for me, the slight letdown wasn't that they got back together. I actually liked that as someone whose parents were divorced, but that the story, which had been very focused on the parents' relationship, suddenly ditched it and focused on the child. And Gus, that was what you kept bringing up as we were playing. You were like, I don't like how this
It was a
shift has
really
happened.
quick pivot,
Everything that they've been building up sort of didn't matter as much now that they weren't dolls. More meaningful talk between them might have been beneficial. Also, I don't think it helped that the human figures weren't as expressive as the dolls.
Totally.
Every time you see the humans, I was like, who the fuck is this?
Totally.
And you'd spent that time bonding with those little avatar dolls, and so then to see them at the end, you have a complete disconnect from that. Didn't help the ending either, I think, in a way that made you go like, I don't care about these two people, just purely from a physical standpoint of being like, these are now voices in new bodies.
Yeah,
Like, it did not feel like
boring
those-
bodies not made of linen.
Yeah, actually, and you know what? Was it strange that the game didn't do any little bit at the end of seeing the two dolls? Oh, that's the ending. That's the ending it should have been. The parents don't quite work it out. It's ambiguous, but then as the camera moves through the house and you see all those other inanimate objects, you just see the little dolls again, and one of them just goes like,
Oh, yeah.
I'd say one's like this and the other one's kind of like
Peter, no.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but include Cutie the elephant with a stump. And then just, that's what we get. Okay, so we have talked tons about the story. We've torn that to shreds. We've built it back up. We fixed it thanks to Gus. Let's talk about like where this game totally shines, which is in the gameplay. When I first heard about that this was a game about like fixing a relationship and all that sort of thing, my mind immediately went to those cliches of like, working together, using magnets as a romance. And even though the game does go to those places, I feel like most of the time it's genuinely really effective and fun at the same time. I would argue that for nearly every mechanic of the game, but I wanted to go around and see what everyone's favorite part of the game was. Steph, let's start with you. What was your favorite like mechanic or ability that you get in the game?
Oh man, it's like trying to choose your favorite cookie out of like a big giant box of
We've
cookies.
had this conversation.
It's just like there were so many incredible moments in it
Cookies.
that
Oh.
I just loved. I thought, and like nods to other gameplay genres, which you could argue are them just kind of being unoriginal because they're copying other things, but they kind of always put a new clever spin on it.
Yeah.
And it was like fun nods to other video game genres or games in general, and like stuff that I'd never experienced in a co-op game or otherwise. I feel like my favorite, probably, if I had to pick,
And you do.
and I do,
because
would,
we have a tape package.
Yeah.
would be the whole sort of section through the snow where you're using magnets. Like, I loved that kind of sort of opposition magnet mechanic that we had to kind of use together. I loved it as a way to repel things and kind of attach yourself to stuff. In particular, I loved the moment where you had to kind of, in our case, Peter had to shoot these kind of magnet things onto an ice wall, and then I had to kind of like attach myself to them to make my way across a cliff.
Yeah.
Like, that was cool. I remember when I was like, how am I going to get across here? And Peter was like, I think I can shoot. And we both went, oh, cool.
Let's take a little bit of a look at the magnet part of It Takes Two.
Yeah! This magnet will help you rediscover the attraction you once felt for each other. Yeah! Come on! Oh! Hey! Bye-bye! I can feel my magnet reacting!
Wow! Amazing! Oh, if the attraction is this strong, then the reverse must be true. Cody, there! Hurry up!
You just wrecked the game for me.
I'm so sorry. Nitrotex called it out in the
It was
chat.
Nitrotex, yeah.
The magnets spell come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cody.
Unbelievable.
And
Cody
and
made
you in the
it
middle.
next time.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Oh my God.
Has that ruined the mechanic?
Which is, I think, like a really. I mean, there's a lot of really like thematic kind of metaphor in the
Yeah,
game.
here
we go.
And the calm, I think, is the metaphor for Rose. So they're all together at the end.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
together.
Oh,
I
well, they haven't
tried
done
to
that in a
clean it
long
up.
time.
I
They haven't done that in
tried.
years.
I tried.
You and I did draw a giant penis.
I thought you were going
when
to say
we had
come
the
together.
That's
So,
Oh,
Now we can do a high five. All right.
Hey, looking,
I really like the magnet part as well. I thought that like it's the most cliched in terms of like it was the first thing I thought of like
We all just
that's a
ripped on it,
mechanic that I would put into the game.
Yeah.
But I think it worked together really well. It was so like I think the game really nails that thing of most of the time making the abilities fun for both parties. This was the first one where, and I think potentially the only one, where you basically had the same abilities, like push, pull, and stick together.
Yeah,
whereas
true.
like the rest of the game, it was like you had pretty varied things.
Yeah,
Whereas this
Yeah,
was
complementary as opposed to identical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the whole like joining to jump across gaps and stuff was so satisfying.
it's actually,
Yeah.
in going back and just checking some of the footage for this, it looks like one of possibly the longest used mechanics for a level. So once you get it, as you can see, you're using it each to pull or push different polarizing colors.
Yeah.
But then, as you said, this moves actually into the area where you ski through a big race course, pulling yourself to get air off
Yeah,
the
those jumps.
That then moves into the underwater section.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's still on you in the underwater bit. You're doing the
Yeah.
puzzles down there. And you're actually...
You'd love that.
The underwater
the power boost.
Oh, I
magnet.
thought you were
Oh,
gonna say
I love that too. That was one of the only
Underwater,
mini
yeah.
games that
thought
I
you were gonna say
actually
the-
won.
that fish scared the shit.
Oh yeah, you got really
I'm
scared of that.
actually not playing it up for.
Oh, the anglerfish.
Oh, it came out and it went,
He was genuinely
made like a full
disturbed.
noise. I hate underwater big things moving around.
I think
in
what was
games.
interesting about this for me as well is it probably this was the mechanic that took me the longest to get the hang of, like to use sort of smoothly. But I think that's why I liked it. I was like, I'm not used to doing this kind of push-pull thing in a game, and it was kind of messing with my head a little bit. So it took me longer to master it. But then once I did, I think I loved it even more because it was just like, yeah, it was kind of like confusing my brain in a fun way. And
That's
then-
really interesting because I felt like this was one of the more classic video game feeling parts of the game,
Sure,
and like
yeah.
which I really liked. Like I think it was awesome, but yeah, I didn't have that thing. Like to me, it always felt like I'm in a RPG and I'm lifting up blocks or something with like my wizard power.
Yeah.
And then to continue, like we saw you then get to the point where you can pull yourselves towards each other and connect so you can clear distances and jumps like that. And then the final scene is when you're using it to traverse across a blizzard, so you're kind of hanging on to things as you
that was cool.
move through the blizzard as it keeps you there. So just as a single mechanic or ability that they get so much life out of throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's actually huge.
I think this one probably gets one of the most amounts of like different ideas out of the one mechanic, but I think they did a pretty good job throughout the whole game of making sure that the mechanic isn't just a one-bit mechanic.
Yeah.
Maybe the first one is the most like that with the nails and the hammer swinging, but they build puzzles that are fun to traverse with that tool that doesn't change so much.
Yeah.
But every other time it's like, oh, this thing does this in this way, but you can also use it in all these other different ways.
And they're changing it so frequently, the sort of the way that you use the mechanic, that just when you feel like you've done everything you could possibly do with it and you're maybe starting to get a bit sick of it, they're like, surprise, you're not going to use that.
Yeah, totally.
It's the Mario Galaxy formula. It's like
Yeah.
they're one and done with the puzzle. They keep the mechanic, but they change that puzzle up a few times, and then you move on to the mechanic evolves in a different way.
And it's really
Yeah.
impressive because like most of the time I find like mini game style titles to be very, very hit and miss, whereas I feel like most of these hit really well. Okay, Gus, what was your favorite mechanic that you used?
So this was less about the both having the same ability, like Steph talked about, but I liked in the space area where my character Cody got the ability to grow and shrink.
Yeah.
While I think May had the less fun ability of
worst one.
moon boots. So you could run up some things.
I love the moon boots.
They were good. They were good.
Great.
There were no cosmic inflation. So
Let's see some of that cosmic inflation.
Hey, Cody, try this on.
Snug?
Wow, it works.
What are you doing?
Cosmic inflation.
Just stop it! Just turn it off!
Amazing. Hey, just turn me back to normal. Do you want to get out of here or not?
Computer, remove all limiters! We're at threat level alpha!
And we need to use cosmic inflation.
it's so cool. It's such like it's probably cool on a more technical scale than the actual puzzles that you do with it. But the first time obviously you've got the ability to grow really big, and then you can go back to normal size and then shrink to miniature. And that shrinking to miniature thing was mind-boggling because it suddenly made a meter in the game. Like
30 meters.
30 meters, and your character would take that long to run over it and get stuck on the smallest ledge. So it was just like I've seen games play with scale, but not in a way that's that immediate and that like leaves you kind of that awestruck.
And it was so fun because you'd be kind of like exploring the world together and be like, I don't know where to go for the next bit. And I'd be like, no, there's a tiny hole for you people. You have to crawl through. It's over here.
And then
I think that was the bit that separated it from other games where you grow and shrink or whatever, was that there was someone else there with you, and it's like they could watch you do it, and you could sit on the other side of your screen. You go,
Yeah.
And then with some really nice little touches, like obviously the dialogue, the character's voice gets really deep and boomy, or really tiny helium voice, depending. So you can do it with dialogue, which is just silly.
That was cool.
And also like you change weight and everything.
Yes.
Like I wasn't crazy about May's thing. That the gravity
was
boots
too
me.
simple.
Yeah, they were just kind of what it was. But it was so much fun watching you and like grow, shrink, like you said, like shrink down to get inside the tape deck or whatever to put the battery in.
Yeah.
But then when we were figuring out puzzles, it was also like I think it was the level where it felt the most like you need to think with like another dimension to the puzzle solving. A lot of the puzzle solving was like shoot a nail here and I'm going to swing off it, or like put honey on this and I'll blow it up or whatever. And this was like, well, we can't get up here. Okay, maybe you need to get bigger so you're heavier, and maybe that's like adding another level of like
puzzle.
a physicsy puzzle.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was enough of a bit of a like mind, like as you said, a portal kind of moment that they go, well, then May can just have moon boots that say walk on yellow stuff because I needed your brain power to help me through that puzzle. So it's almost like this takes two people to work this puzzle out, and just if you had something just as complicated, the puzzle would get way too intense, that kind of thing. So I like that. I did appreciate as well that there's a weight puzzle with a seesaw, and I don't know if you guys did the same thing, but basically I got Nick up higher, and then he could jump on the seesaw to launch me up. So I thought thought, well, I clearly have to be
We
miniature.
were like, you got to go tiny to jump on the, so you're light enough to jump
fly
up on
up.
the ledge.
Yeah.
and so he
yeah.
butt stomps the end of it, and because I'm miniature, I just go.
He charges space.
I fly into space and die, and it's like this moment we
Amazing.
both go, "Oh, okay."
We thought about this the wrong
that doesn't
way.
work.
yeah.
It was so clearly like built into there that they're going to be like, some people are going to think you'll need to go really small here instead of just like normal size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just, you went up so fast. Everyone
We're talking like, oh, we both just had this moment that, yeah.
I feel like maybe they could have included, because a similar kind of mechanic to the moon boots thing was in the garden section when you're riding the spiders. When you had that thing where you had to
Oh,
shoot
yeah.
web on the
Yeah, yeah,
ceiling
yeah.
and then it would turn the world around.
Yeah.
Maybe like if they'd added something like a variation
bit more
on
for
that,
me in
that
that
would-
regard.
that would-
And then-
so I really liked that section with the spiders. That was really cool.
That was cool. And then, yeah, the space one was, again, one where they go like, hey, you're in a bit of a kind of open sandbox for what kind of puzzles we want to do. You're not in a literal space. You're in just kind of like in space. That was all fun doing puzzles and opening doors. There was a few of those sections where it's like, hey, 3 gates to get through. And you're like, okay. But each one was actually fun. And then finally the boss, Moon Baboon, that you fight was a fun boss. But then the highlight for me was then I had to shrink
Miniature
down,
running inside,
jump
yeah.
inside
Yeah.
his spaceship, which
So
we saw a
clever.
little bit of there. And I'm running through kind of Ant-Man in Iron Man suit.
Past his feet, like putting up, like
You
putting his foot
see
on
the
clutch
toy
and stuff.
pressing
It's like,
the pedal and
yeah,
sort of
cool.
sitting under it.
So cool.
And it was just like, and that was probably one of the few times where I'm doing something completely separate to what you were doing, which
Yeah.
in this case
Yeah.
was just avoiding lasers and
it
killing
got
time.
hectic right there. Like that avoiding lasers thing when
That's
you're
intense.
in
I was
That was wild, but I was like enjoying how like involved I was in that while you were hearing what you were describing. You were doing. I couldn't look at your screen.
Well,
Totally.
I was
And I
just going to say,
stopped to
I was like focused really hard on what I was trying to do. I'm like, I'm trying to run through this thing. It's like it's basically a gauntlet, and all I could hear you do was go, ah!
And there was a lot of like you and I going. I'm like, are you nearly there? And you're like, I swear I nearly am. Like I'm like, it's getting really hairy out here.
Yeah.
But then I loved it. I was racing through to help you out, and at one point
I've never seen what you actually did.
No. And then one thing I was trying to get your attention to see is that you do go as a platform that you have to roll under is this giant furry moon baboon foot on a pedal. And I was like, Nick, look at my screen, And then you weren't watching, and I looked over to your screen, and there's just this death maze of lasers. I was like, I'll get on with it. No
Yeah,
worries.
totally.
Yeah.
Will, can we bring up? It's actually the first one from Phoenix O'Lion. From earlier, but Phoenix O'Lion wrote in the Discord and said, Moon Baboon killed me emotionally. I know I still have my best friends in my cupboard, and that Maisie, her daughter, has clearly started to attach to stuffed animals she has. Moon Baboon just wants his child to be happy no matter what.
Yes,
Sob.
that's
And it was
so
because Moon Baboon really was like, I won't let you hurt her.
But then and this calls back to what I was saying earlier, like I thought all the voice performances were great, all the mocap was great, but the idea that they've given Moon Baboon this kind of like Bob Hoskins, Jason Statham
Totally.
voice where it's like, get away from Rose. I'm like,
so true.
who is this voice? But it was great and
Yeah.
like super aggressive. And then I think after the final stage of that boss is I'm targeting him with a targeting computer while you're
Yeah.
navigating the UFO, and he's
awesome.
yeah.
He's just a little baboon running around the moon getting shot.
Yeah.
And then the final scene is him just lying there, kind of lifeless, being like, "Please don't hurt Rose."
Oh
God! But yeah, trying to explain all those separate parts. It's like we're chasing a moon baboon as I'm shrinking down in space to save my daughter. It's like they're all absurd, but then these moments just feel totally like you're in them.
I said earlier that space sequence was the one that felt a bit long in the tooth for me, and I think it was only because of like I think all the puzzles were fun through the gates, but it was that there was 3
Yep.
press the thing, take a lift up,
Yeah.
3 more,
Yeah.
and it was like, and one of them wasn't good, so it was like, man, I wish it'd just been 3 that were maybe a little
Same.
bit longer,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
the lift thing was slow for no reason, and
There was
like
you started to get a hint of repetition being like,
Which was, as
Yeah.
we said, like it's rare that the game was doing it all the time, but there were a few moments
And
when
when
they
it,
went.
but when it does show up, you go, oh,
Video
this is
game.
not what I'm used
Yeah.
to. Because so the first like third of the game just flowed so well. Like you
Yeah.
just like moved through it. And that was the first point where I went, oh, this is interesting that they're making me do this again. Because it feels
But
like I completed the idea you had here, which was 3
Yeah.
things and then go up a lift. Yeah.
But I kind of liked that. I feel like that whole area felt a bit more hectic and combat heavy and like I don't know. I liked that there was a moment that broke that flow that kind of made you feel like you were focusing on different skills for that whole section.
Yeah.
And then again, it moved out of it afterwards.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there were so many different like acts to this game in terms of the gameplay that it used that made me feel like I was playing different games when I was in
totally.
those
Yeah,
sections.
totally.
Yeah.
And speaking of different,
I was just going to say, you're right about once they worked out, they're like the first third half of the game flows from, basement to treehouse to garden to bed. And it's like, how do they seamlessly get them to flow from one area to the next? I worked it out. They just slow motion flick them because every scene transition was, what? Get flung. And by the end, I was never tired of it, but it was like, here's how do we get from the attic to the garden? Off they go. And it worked.
Pete, your favorite level?
Yeah, so obviously
Ability.
ability. Yeah, the game was full of different mechanics that were all fun to use, but when it took those away from you, I found a lot of joy in those moments. And there's that one mission that starts as like you're in Dino Park, you're on a ship, and then suddenly you're like doing trapeze work and stuff, and it becomes more like Rube Goldberg machines than I've got a nail and you've got a hammer. We know exactly how this mechanic works.
Yeah.
And I found that really, really cool. And I think it was like the toy box area it was called.
We'll play the clip.
I will play the clip.
This doesn't look like the way to the castle.
Told you to trust me.
Is that a dinosaur?
Yeah, we're in Dino Land.
Whoa! Let's just find a way to clear the track.
What? How?
They've got cannons too!
You're out of here. Hey, I don't like their cannons.
Neither do I.
Attack!
No, let us go! Oh, why did you have to buy this stupid, ugly octopus?
It is not ugly in real life. It is super cute and huggable. Hey, Mr. Octopus. Don't listen to her. You are super cute. And you have such beautiful, arms. Do you work out? Please let us go.
So yeah, some very cute moments in that whole sequence. Very much an on-rails part of the game as well. It's like even when you were moving around, you were either in a ship and you couldn't move that much, or as like quite small the areas, and that wasn't always the case in the game. And I thought it was really cool to just be in like a toy box of different kinds of puzzles. I got to be the dinosaur and crane the neck and move those platforms around that you were platforming on, which was a fun idea.
Yeah.
But I really, really loved being in the ship, not only because it was action and it was nice to have some action in the game, like, because there wasn't a lot of that, but we were literally controlling the same thing. And the challenge of like going like, all right, when you push forward, I'll pull back and we can turn right really hard, that kind of thing. Was a fun thing to navigate together.
Yeah,
struggle with it because I don't really. We were doing it quite intuitively. Like
I think at first I thought I was controlling it one way, and then sort of halfway through I was like, oh, I didn't realize it was a forward and back thing of those actual paddle wheels.
Yeah.
I thought I was like turning the thing.
Oh,
so
right.
once I'd kind of understood that, then
it was like it was pretty intuitive, and I think maybe we died once, but it was like it was fun to. It was a fun way to fight a boss. Together
totally.
with like it's that thing where you like you used to just give like your cousin or your mate the right half of the controller and you had the left half, and it was like let's try and play this together, and that's what it kind of was reminiscent of to me.
I liked because we spoke about it a little bit as it started, and then we found that you and I found that groove of like how to do it, and then particularly fighting that boss. I think it was like all the boss fights in this I think are really solid, and it does a good job of going like boss fight for a little bit, and then like the next one will be more like a platforming like escape this thing seg. But I liked this boss fight for the reasons you're talking about, Pete, where you found that rhythm and you started to know like. You're controlling half of this, you know kind of what half of this you're controlling. And so then like working together, and it was those moments where you go, oh yeah, we're genuinely doing this together. Not like I've solved this puzzle and now I'm telling you what to do. It's actually like, no, we are doing this together.
The best kind of teamwork in a co-op game, be it over mics or person to person, is that one where you both kind of come up with a really blunt shorthand that you're both like, turn, tentacle, Yep.
Yeah, totally.
Co-op, spinning again. And it's like you're saying it emotionally without an emotion because you're both just in like totally
You're in sync.
Just being like,
Yeah.
And not the one where you're like, oh, watch out for the attack, Nick. Here it comes. And like, turn harder. Yep, he's almost
The
dead.
E3
Like,
demo of it.
Yeah, totally, yeah. Well, I think we made that joke at one point
We
when we were
did.
playing it. I was like, he's on your 6.
we had some moments where it was like we played it the way it should have been played, and we're like, wow, for a game to do that and make you like, enjoy the moment the way the designer wanted versus the way we usually break a game or something like that is lovely.
So my favorite one is probably going to be controversial because I've already seen people say that they hated it. And I don't actually think it's the best mechanic, but was my favorite mechanic to use as my character. And it was the last part with the sort of like the music level in the attic. And I was playing as May and it was her singing. And I think that part of the reason that I connected to this so much is that I had connected to May over the second half of that game. And so this was like her passion. And so therefore it felt more meaningful to me that this was something that like she loved. And so therefore I loved it as the player. We'll take a quick look and then talk about it.
Look, I'm not going to sing a single note.
Woo! Yes, you will. Yeah. Come on, May. You can do this. I believe in you. You can do this, May. I know you can.
I just love that area. Like the music was like it had that sort of Snake Charmer vibe to it, but it was ethereal and very strange. But I loved actually running and using that ability. Like I would run and sing. There were times where the music would sort of like her singing would blend really nicely into the soundtrack.
Well, even the shouts as well. I love it when games do that. If you're holding the singing, she's singing complementary notes to what's happening through the looping soundtrack. And even the little like shouts that it sounded very Bjork to me. I decided. But I think the reason a lot of people might have had a bit of problems with it is that obviously every time you're playing with someone, you get a power, they get a power. You're like, oh, which one have I got? In that case, Cody has a Captain America shield. So in terms of a video game and an action-heavy sequence, you have a literal power that you're using to break things and throw it. It's kind of cool that it swings and comes back to you. Whereas like, oh, I can sing. It does feel like a bit of a...
But she had a Fusro Da shout that she could do.
Totally.
Like,
It was
awesome.
I liked it too. I liked it
cool.
too. I just think like sometimes if you were to compare all the powers, throwing nails was better than swinging on a hammer. I'm just saying.
I did see...
But isn't that also like promotes replayability though, right? Because you kind of want to experience the game.
Really good point.
Yeah, I hadn't
not
thought about that
that.
at all. I did see some people in the Discord talking about how they didn't like the fact that May's thing became sort of like she wanted to be like a singing princess style character. And I had not considered that, and I totally respect that as an opinion. For me, it was like particularly because she's like an engineer throughout the game, but I was like, I didn't see it as like this is the chick power. I read it as like she's someone who has multitudes within her. Like they leaned really heavily into the idea of her engineering throughout the entire game. Like basically, I read it as every weird thing in that house is because she built something that's now hiding in the attic or whatever. And like I'm someone who loves video games and sport and musicals, and those three things aren't necessarily like always a Venn diagram of like what everybody who likes those things also like that stuff. So the fact that she went to this sort of like, I don't even necessarily say it was feminine, but this idea of like this soft singing when she was like this cool engineer doesn't discount that. And so I really connected to the idea that this was something that she used to do and doesn't do anymore. And so being able to do it now was exciting. Cody's passion was the gardening. And it's like he still kind of gardened because he was the stay-at-home dad. So there was some references to the fact that he was still doing that, but not as much. Whereas it was like May had almost forgotten that she
used
to sing, yeah.
and didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah,
as well, like
yeah.
Cody wants to keep gardening, whereas she was like rejecting that.
Yeah, she'd taken on. Yeah.
I totally agree. I think in terms of how they've represented May as a character, almost every single power that she gets in this game, like, you know, in the dungeon crawler section, she's not the magic user, she's the knight with the sword.
Yeah.
You know, she's the breadwinner of the family and she's an engineer. Like, they've worked really hard to make her not a stereotypical, like, you know, generalized woman.
Mum.
Like, yeah, totally. So I think they've done a really good job in that sense. I don't see the singing as anything that kind of takes away from any of that. I think for me, it was really important to see her in a vulnerable moment because of the two characters, they're constantly like, you know, throughout the large portion of the game, they're quipping at each other and they're both really mean. But I would say she comes across harsher in a lot of situations. And, you know, you see her being very pragmatic in the way she wants to solve things and kind of comes across as like sometimes a little bit like
cold.
Yeah. So to be able
because he gets most of the humor, particularly at the start.
Yeah.
They let him be like, he's nurturer all the way through because he looks after Kid and Yard.
Yeah.
But also he has the fun with the other characters. He makes the jokes with the squirrels and the bee and stuff. And so it's like, oh, we like you, but we're not sure if we like May.
Because she's just really snarky all the time and she seems really stressed because she's like, oh, it's on me to kind of like work and provide
Bring the
for
money
the
in
family.
and that sort of thing, yeah.
So to watch her kind of go through this thing where she was really nervous and she's like, I can't do this anymore. This isn't who I am anymore. Like I'm scared to be this person and like and have to kind of be vulnerable and then I guess even like it's not necessary that someone has a creative part to them, but it was nice to see her involved in something that was really kind of free and freeing for her, and I really liked that.
And also the idea, just back to the sort of as a mechanic and as the levels, you really enjoyed, there was that whole jukebox section that you moved through, but then that sort of ascends into the whole ethereal heaven-like area where that ability continues. And then even, I don't think you use it again, but down into like the nightclub. So as a section of the game, as an area, that
And
really
was it
does...
the first part of the game where you had dual abilities? Because like I had the shout and the sing.
Oh,
and I can't remember if I
yeah.
had other parts in the game where I had like two things that I could do.
I feel like in the plant section, maybe like I had the water and something else.
It was just the water. I had the head
water.
snap,
Maybe I'm wrong.
whip.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you're right. It would have been the one that, and we had to work it out a little bit and be like, oh, you've got like a mana for your singing, how long you can hold it, and then a little shout as well. So, and then just to finish the sort of the areas we're talking about then, like you move into this, again, big question mark of, oh, we're in heaven or something. And then that goes, hang on, you just quickly need to go to a nightclub and DJ and Dance Revolution, which was just a real, such a needed little moment of like, let's just muck about.
That was great.
I really loved that as well.
love
Again, not the singing directly, but that whole area was kind of fun.
Chad is pointing out that in the gardening area, May has the melee attack with the scythe.
You're right.
And
that
also
was
the
totally
water cannon.
Yeah, totally.
That's right.
totally.
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I think Cody's stuff in that is like he's got the snap hair thing,
But
but,
then
he
he
also has
turns
lots of
into plants.
context sensitive stuff as well. He'll hop into pods.
He turns into
a bunch
plants.
of
Remember
different
the time
stuff.
we turned into moss, Peter?
That was the greatest
That
was
video
so
game
cool.
moment in history.
That was so cool.
Why did we not pick that one?
Well, that's good because we've spoken about the mechanics, but I think that along with changing the mechanics, the world design and levels, I just feel like were so imaginative. They varied up so much. I also thought that not only were they almost uniformly, for me, beautifully designed, they were also enormous. Particularly that first stuff where you're going around the house, and I was just like, this just level keeps folding back in on itself and going on and on. It felt like I have not been in a bigger level in a video game. I don't know why
like
that was.
kind of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where you're kind of crawling through pieces of worlds that
Totally.
keep expanding and the further you go in, the more you lose your sense of scale and time.
The bigger everything gets as
That's what
you
I was,
go
I was
deeper
saying
down.
earlier on.
Yeah.
Like, they really get to a point where you forget where you started when you find yourselves in these, very sort of...
Totally, and it's that thing that great like adventure films do in that the flow is so good that you forget where you just were because the whole thing is such a ride. Like I went back and scrubbed our whole gameplay session. Like, holy shit, that happened. Oh, there's that bit where you fall onto like you're on the lid of a barrel floating underwater in a cave, and like I was controlling the propeller. and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my god, what the fuck are the ghost fish? Those things we wrote.
Oh yeah,
What was
and
that
the whole
about?
inside of the tree where you're just like, which is that, where you're just like, how the fucking hollow is this thing?
Yeah,
It's
wild.
so amazing because like when I first had to start thinking about, my my favorite moments from this game to talk about on this stream. Like my mind broke a little bit
Yeah.
at just trying to go back through all the things that we did.
Remember the kaleidoscope part? Where I was just like, I've never seen something like this in a game. Where suddenly, like, all the screen started to like fracture
That's
into.
right.
That was
Yeah.
nuts. Like,
Yeah.
I loved like in the tree. I think the tree was where we started to like go. I see what this game is doing because the house was like. Lots of stuff here has been designed by May and kind of like just left.
Yeah.
But the tree was like, there's this whole war going on. You were pointing out they were experimenting on nuts and like growing limbs
That's
on
right.
acorns
Yeah,
and shit.
The squirrels.
Yeah, and the whole like them sending them like there was the torture scene. They tried to kill us at one point.
Yeah.
and then the bumblebee reveal of being like the Wizard of Oz. Like, and you're just like all of this is happening inside a tree,
Bumblebee, that's
which is
right.
also where the
That's so
ghost fish
funny.
swimming around.
That was
were.
that's how you leave that area. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, Pete, you make a really good point that you're right. Like a good adventure movie or something, like the less establishing shots with text at the bottom saying "Meanwhile, May's room," or like the less movies that go "Meanwhile at CIA headquarters." Like if it can just follow these characters the whole way through, it just stops that kind of like stop-start nature, and you end up just going along for the whole ride. And to a lesser extent, like hard to put the game down because of that. Like,
Yeah.
given we would flow from section to section and be like, I don't really know where we call it quits for tonight.
Totally. Like the first time, the end of that first session was like we played for an hour longer than we thought we would because we went from the squirrel fight thing to flying a plane and being in a dogfight. You were
Yeah.
controlling the gun,
which was so cool.
which was amazing. To I'm flying the plane and you're in Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Oh shit! That's
Yeah.
right.
I really wanted
It's
to
like-
really
It was,
try. You nearly failed. It was like,
a fighter sequence
Yeah.
with the squirrel.
Oh yeah, that's right. I got down to like that much health.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was wild.
And then from there, she kicks the squirrel off, and it's a glider. And then you're like gliding your way through, like flying in
right.
a
That
different
was a
way,
lot
both
of it.
controlling how to like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you end up landing in the room to get to the best scene in the thing, which is where you kill the elephant.
Well, you kill the elephant, which is excellent.
I was just so impressed with all of.
Yeah.
I think there was. It made me realize. I said this to Gus as we were playing. I was like, God, it makes you realize how most video games just do fucking nothing. Like most video games have 3 or 4 mechanics. and-
Outriders, get out of here.
and they're all the same mechanic all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I was just kind of astounded that. I was amazed that the engine could hold up with so many different things that it was doing. Like at one point, you get in that top-down MOBA style dungeon crawler thing.
Yeah.
Like all the flying and racing, the Street Fighter thing,
and it all looks really
the
beautiful.
Mario
Like,
Rainbow Road Race, like all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah,
where
the Rainbow Road. I mean, I'm impressed when a game takes me through multiple different locations. Like, I love being able to be taken on a journey through different landscapes. That is what usually keeps the game feeling really fresh for me. But for this to have taken you through so many different places that are totally imaginative and wild and beautiful, like beautifully designed, but to give you so many different mechanics and co-op mechanics too throughout the game was just like,
Yeah.
And I think like those mini games were like dispersed pretty healthily throughout the game.
the
but-
mini games hang.
Well, I wanted to mention the tortured elephant in the room, which was that, like, yeah, Nick and I probably just dabbled with a couple of the mini games, but going back through looking at a lot of other people's footage and just realizing how many more there were that we missed. As in, we were playing this for completion, and we weren't.
we were worried that we weren't going to make it,
Yeah.
like because we had to keep finding time together to play. So we were like,
yeah.
we'll just skip the mini games. So we would always find them, and then
But
it
at
would be
one
like
point-
tambourine, and then we'd just turn around.
I think we got an achievement for doing every single one. So
Yeah,
I think,
No, I don't think we
wow.
did every single one.
Oh, really?
We did a lot of them.
Yeah, right.
Sorry
I'm
to
sure we
hear.
missed one or
Some of them
two,
were
but-
really in depth. There was a great moment in the garden where the path splits, and Nick and I we were talking to each other, and our characters kind of stopped and went, look left, look right, look
Yeah.
left, and then we went right. We
Sexy
both went
Spa?
up, and we looked at.
we found Sexy
We did go to Sexy Spa.
What's the spa?
But this point was us looking down to an area, and there was like some sort of.
It was a
traps of
fence.
There was a
We
fence,
need to
and there
climb
was a
over the
garden bed with lanes, and we're like, "Is that where we need to go?" And as we got a little bit closer, a tambourine went bing, and we went, "Oh fuck!" And we both turned around, turned on the same point, and ran off in the other direction.
That's
Yes, we
so
did the
funny.
Sexy Spa. That was the one that I enjoyed. And then like the other mini games, at one point I was like, "They have chess here. Is it a full game of chess? Nick, come play chess." And so of all the fun, weird little mini games that are creative, the one I spent the
play
most time
chess.
is like, we could play chess.
Yeah.
We
Full
could
game
play a
of chess,
really
anyone?
clunky
we didn't play a full game because we were
No,
like,
no,
this
but-
is kind of clunky to control, and we could just play chess on our phones
Yeah.
with each other. So we'll do
Yeah,
that later.
yeah.
But they're great
No,
from everything I saw.
there some really, really great
The
ones.
slot cars people raved about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. There was that shooter. The one we did, the first one we did, I think, was that shooter one.
There was a shooter
where it was
one that
like
was
the
great.
paddles coming back and forth.
There was
There's
like
some
there was like
DDR
a
and
bull
stuff.
riding one.
Yep.
It was like
There's some ice skate racing I saw you guys do, which I was kind of like, I love the ice skating. I wish I'd done
of course,
more
the
of that.
Tower of Death.
Tower of
The
Death,
Tower of
which
Death.
wasn't really a mini game so much as, and again, like the world had the thing that elevated this game from just being like really like a good co-op game to being this thing that I respect for having so much care and polish put into it was those mini games and things like Hell Tower, which was a bastard of a thing. But
Did you get to the top?
I got to the
Peter
top.
did. I gave up.
Right.
You
I
set off
reckon
fireworks.
I reckon I could have done it, but I reckon
cute.
it would have taken me like an hour.
Yeah. The it's the amount of detail that was in all that. Like there are so many of those hubs, and they're just so full of stuff.
Like that Winter Wonderland thing and
Yeah.
the thing before the clock tower, like
Yeah.
getting to that which you were like, oh my god, this is like.
This
I
is
think we'd come out of top-down dungeon crawler Dota style thing, and we were like, Pete's gonna love this bit, and then we emerged. I think we emerged into that like Scandinavian village. We were like, Steph's gonna fucking.
It was perfect. It was like and because it looked like the inside of a cuckoo clock. You know,
Yeah.
that whole kind of thing.
Yeah. It was
beautiful.
We've been to Bavaria. We bought one of those clocks. It's on a wall in our house at home, and I just loved. Yeah, there were so many.
There's a mini divorce couple in it right now.
but even down to things like, because mini games and like Hell Tower and whatever, but like the one that stood out to me was the photo booth thing. There's a Polaroid camera, and
Oh, yeah, right.
yeah.
one of you can stand in front of like a bunch of different cards,
Nick
and the other
didn't take
can
my
press a button.
photo.
Didn't take your photo, but like, so that was like totally optional. It was the first, I think, at that point in the game, the first kind of sweet moment between the two of them. That was still in the
Tree,
tree. I think it's still in the tree.
that's right.
There were photos of
Yeah, it
the
wasn't
family
the
up
tree,
on the wall.
Yeah.
And you were making memories together and interacting in a way that felt pleasant
Yeah.
for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's like things like that you could just ignore if you wanted to just keep powering through a game because the game is fun. But things like that are put in there for the only reason they're put in there is because the developers wanted there to be more.
Yeah.
For their characters, for their game, for the player.
Yeah.
Like
were-
they're the things that made the game really, really,
Totally.
really
There were things that
special
you
to
could
me.
just interact with for the sake of it, which
Yeah.
were like,
Yeah.
which were really lovely.
I think there was
that
a,
fleshed out that world.
There's
really
a viewfinder
beautifully.
at the end that has some really lovely,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
painterly real photos of a family
Yeah.
that has them and them going traveling, and then at one point, 2 kids.
Yeah.
And I was
Yes.
What the hell?
I assumed that was a friend.
Yes, we assumed so.
Friend, cousin,
Yeah.
we're not going to go any darker than that.
I believe Rose and
The
Kevin-
one that
Kevin?
died.
But the Gus made a great point when we were playing as well, which
Thank you.
was it never felt claustrophobic. And then I think I made a great point from the back of that, which was the levels are quite the way that because you're always playing split screen, the levels are quite vertical in terms of like there's just it always felt like there was lots of you were rarely in a space where there was a ceiling on you. It always kind of went up into space, so
Yeah.
you never felt particularly claustrophobic vertically. And I think that was
Small
a
characters with a good field of view.
But then, funnily enough, one of our favorite moments in the game was right at the end when May is about to go out and sing, and it goes full screen, just May, and the camera comes up close to the back of her head, and we were like, "Oh my god!" Like Gus was like, "It's like God of War." Like they
went-
over
she
the shoulder
slow
thing is just slow.
I said it was like a
Yeah.
Soderbergh film. I was like with a follow shot.
It also
now.
completely like the camera that close to the back of her head and seeing like the individual fibers of the string like on her hair and stuff and just going, oh, this game is actually stunning.
Yeah.
And the whole time I'm watching, I was looking at it thinking, and I kept thinking of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Every time I see that game, I'm like, there's so much stuff on screen.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt in this game is just like there's so much detail, everything is so gorgeous. And yet when this revealed and Gus was like, are you like me and you're sitting like 1.5 meters away from your television? I was like, yes I am. I could see everything.
It was amazing. And then, even to make the character model walk slowly, feel weighted, put the camera down there so suddenly, and I love that they do basically a Last of Us loading screen.
Yeah,
Where it's
yeah.
like, I'm waiting at the other side for it. But yeah, then as you can see here, oh, sorry for anyone listening, it's like you bounce between the two characters, having their little moments alone. And it's poignant because you haven't done it much up until that point. I think maybe A Way Out did a few more moments where you got to control while I had hands off. Whereas this felt like at the end, it was a nice little way just to have a breather. And it was a poignant moment.
And it was also like...
It's good tension building.
And just like, it's a really, like, it gave the moment the space that it needed, because like so much of the game is hectic
game.
And even like all of the camera direction before that has that a little bit of that thing that I hate in video games, which is like, because it's a 3D, it's a fake camera, the camera can go anywhere whenever we want it to, and the direction of the camera movement is often like so fake that it feels not cinematic, it feels stupid. And the book was a big instigator of that because he moves so chaotically. So every now and then it was like, that feels a bit lame.
Like
this was so good.
Sorry, did you like some of the cuts when the book was having like shout matches with Cody?
I
like,
love that.
Absolutely,
I'm laughing at this.
There's some great editing in it.
I'm pro book. I saw the book just made it as a positive in the poll.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like the book was like an absurdity that was.
The book is only there. So the voice actor of the book is the same guy who did Cody, and the mocap is done by Joseph Fares.
Yeah.
The book is only there because I'm sure at some point when they were screen testing for Cody, he said relationship in a funny accent, and they were like, yes, you need to say that word every time you appear. You need to say relationship.
But I love the voice acting, as I've said a few times now. I loved May's voice. I thought a great British accent in it. Unfortunately, I think you shared the same opinion that I was like, I wish they'd got a kid to do Rose, because she did have this very childlike, but
it's very obvious when you get an adult to do a kid's voice.
And lost a bit of impact there.
Yeah, and there's no reason why you can't have a kid do those lines. Like, I feel like...
Yeah, totally. And the only other like hit I think I would put against it, I feel like it was potentially a little bit too long. I don't necessarily want any of the levels to be cut or any of the mechanics to be cut. I think it just felt like it was the stuff that you're talking about where that like go up the tower 3 times and do that. When you needed to collect the paper or the torn parts of the thing, at that point I was a bit like, I feel like you're artificially stopping me from progressing, whereas the whole game has been about that breathless progression, that you are just on a bit of a roller coaster that you're controlling. But as soon as it was like, okay, you need to go there, there, and there now, I was like, oh, okay, now I'm on a checklist, as opposed to just like, my way through this game would be the other sort of like hit.
Thought in all the like marketing material for this going ahead, thought this was a 6-hour game or something, or less. Like, I thought it was going to be a sort of 4 to 6 hour game. I did not expect it to have this much depth.
Like 11 to 12 hours.
I can concede that trimming some of the fat in the areas that you're talking about, like where there is sort of a bit of repetition, would be fine. But if making this game shorter means removing any of the amazing stuff that I experienced in this game, then I am against it.
Yeah. And I don't even think it was too long. I think I was just like,
But were you not feeling that? But were you not feeling the pressure of the time limit of having to finish it before this? Like, why?
I agree with Nick, and I think it's like it really stood out at points that it felt like it was going long, only because they did such a good job of making everything feel diverse that when I went up that lift for the second time to do another 3 doors, I was like, oh, this feels a bit the same. When I was on another lift and things were flying diagonally or this was the same battle.
Yeah,
another battle of like make the bull run at the wall kind of thing. There were 2 or 3 of like effectively the same battle against a dung beetle, a metal bull, and something else. It's like, I don't need to do that twice.
Yeah, fair.
And that's the kind of stuff that could maybe be lifted, but they were doing level design where they're like, well, the escalation means there is a boss battle here or a mini boss, and the mini boss will play out this way.
And potentially as well, that Gus and I played this online. You guys lived together and you played it in big chunks.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things where I was like, I can't play this without Gus. And that is the beauty of this game, for sure. But it did mean whenever I felt like playing it, or he felt like playing it, we both had to be in a space where we can do that. So therefore it was like, that there's still another 4 hours ahead of us, and so we need to coordinate another 4 hours of our time, which is a small knock, but it's like, there are not many games where it's like, you have to play this with someone else and not just like random randomly matched.
But it's
it's a very small knock against it.
Yeah, but then the positive of how it feels and how it to experience with someone else. Yeah, it's such
Totally. And I think you're right, Steph. I wouldn't want to lose any of the experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the idea of you in bed rolling over and your partner being like, "What are you thinking about?" And you, and then just like whimsically looking at us. Saying, like,
We could be on a dung beetle
If Gus were here, he would be playing games right next to the bed.
So then, I guess we've spoken through it. Pete,
Yes.
you think that Joseph Fares, who came out very hard on this game, saying things like it's impossible to be bored, promising to pay people literally thousands of dollars if they got bored at some point during this game, that it would be unlike anyone has ever played. Do you think that Haze Light accomplished their goal with this title?
I think they did. I think it is like a relentlessly entertaining, surprising game, and they have really knocked it out of the park. They've made couch co-op like really, really cool again. Not just an added feature, it's like a focus. And fuck the Oscars.
Did you? I mean, it's a 10 out of 10 for you.
Yeah. I've not been so delighted by a game in a long time, and it's not a genre. I don't even know what you would call this genre necessarily. It's an adventure game, I suppose, which is a genre that I like. But playing something kind of cartoony like this, and isn't normally the game that I would go so like I would love so hard on. But I was so impressed with it from start to finish, and I heard myself audibly saying, "Holy shit, this is amazing!" Many times that I feel like I just can't.
Every door we walk through, basically.
Oh my god, yeah. So I think it's such an accomplishment of game design, and I hope everyone plays it, and I hope they do really well out of it, because I think whether they sort of absolutely nailed the tone of the story or not, I think that their ambitions were really huge, and I think they've like mostly lived up to them. So I think, congratulations to the whole team.
Yeah, and I mean, we're seeing great reviews online. We're also I'm seeing heaps of people streaming it as a couple or playing it with friends. And so I hope, like you would with any of these kind of games, that it is taking a lot of people. It's bringing a lot of people along for the ride, because, as you said, you have to play this with someone else. So I'd be curious. We did talk at one point about, like, is this a bit too tricky for the game sells itself as, like, you could play it with a nephew as their first game, or
or your partner.
Or someone who doesn't play games. And I think a little part of us did think, like, there's some technical platforming in here. Like,
I think
there
particularly
are some...
the first few levels, like that, the gun hammer thing, the nail gun hammer is like,
some
oh no, that's like legit aiming and like.
Is there a
difficulty? I don't believe so. No, I had a look, but I don't think it's beyond people who don't play a lot of games to learn, and it's probably a great game to get better at games, to have someone there to help you along and that kind of thing. But yeah, back to that initial point of that. Yeah, I think they totally executed on that kind of promise of it being interesting, engaging, and always exciting. And yeah, I think just the bonus is the ability to now bring more people to play a game like this. I think it is a great launching pad for someone who might play a little bit, or just a sort of a gateway game.
And I just totally adored this game. I think it was I thought it would be good. I thought it would just be good. Yeah. And when he was talking it up so much, I was like, oh yeah, I'm sure, like, this guy's just like, he's a very entertaining character.
He's a character.
But it's like, I'm sure this game would just be good. And then playing it, I was the same as you, just constantly going, oh my God, this is so cool. I was never bored. I just had so much fun with it. I was just amazed that it's lived up to this level of what they were talking about. And then I'm putting together some questions and stuff for this last night, and I'm reading an interview on Push Square with Joseph Fares, and he goes, if you ask me about our next game, I can tell you now it will be even better than It Takes Two. It's going to be so crazy. That's how sure I am. Like, the concept, what's going to happen, people will be blown away. Awesome. And it's like, this game has been out for 3.5 weeks.
I had all these random thoughts when I was playing it, where I was like, imagine someone who doesn't really play games much and is like, or hasn't played games for like a number of years, and like, I'm just going to grab this off the shelf, and they think that this is what games are now. I'd be like, no, you have no idea. Like, this is like, as someone who has played so many games over such a long period of time, this for me is just like such a a meaty joy of an experience. And I think about someone picking this up, being like, "Oh wow, games are like
It'd be fun for
games have come a long way." I'm like,
Well,
no, this
it's
is
also
this is a diamond.
It's like it's such a game of today of like people with the shortest attention spans we've ever had.
Yeah.
It's basically TikTok, the video game.
Yeah. Well, or like, I was thinking, it's like Community, where it's like Community would burn ideas that most shows would be like, we could build 6 seasons around that. And this game is like, we made 9 games.
And speaking about like future projects and stuff, I think some of the stuff we take away from this game and in all its praise can't be replicated in our more traditional games or other styles that we play. And I think a huge part of like they've created a genre of the like perpetually co-op game genre that is like, you know, It Takes Two and this are the perfect examples. I'd love it if these guys not only set the standard for it becoming a bit of a genre in itself, maybe genre is not the right word, but becoming the
More common?
Well, I think
Yeah,
I think
but, like-
I think what you're thinking about is how Telltale. You started talking about Telltale games as Telltale games.
Yes.
They were just narrative point and click adventures, really.
Yep.
But they became Telltale games because of the way Telltale.
That's a great
built
example.
it.
I'd love this to be the
A Haze Light.
a Haze Light game, and again,
There would be Haze Likes.
Haze Light.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Haze Light.
If you're watching, Joseph.
But like, yeah, I want these guys to lead the charge and make more and more experiences like it because I go back to that point of there's emotions and noises I made playing this game that I wouldn't have done if I wasn't with someone else, and they were genuine reactions. But like, I don't do that when I play a game, even with a headset with someone on a PC. It's like these experiences were so intrinsically about doing them with someone else that it's an experience that you can only get with games, but you can only kind of get with these types of games. So I
Yeah.
want to see more of them as well, and I want them
Yeah.
to be the Haze Light inventors.
I think we picked such a good game for our first game club. Like
We're screwed
there's
now.
so much to talk about in it. I think like I was so happy that it was the perfect blend of like the amount of story and the gameplay. We also ran a competition for you guys as well that we put out on the Discord. The prize for the competition is one of the very special back pocket journals here that cost like $70 to ship. Even though it was
So good. We've all got one. We've all got one.
we were like, we should get some so that we have them for the thing. And then we went, actually, let's buy like 20 of them so that we can give them away on stream as prizes. So the winner of the competition is going to get themselves one of these books and a back pocket mug. The
Very book club-esque prizes. Like, how about a journal to take
so
some
true.
notes and a mug to have a warm coffee?
Unfortunately, we ran out
Write
of
your game
erasers.
club notes.
And we do have a pencil with an eraser on the end of it.
Oh, man.
Yes.
The
Put that in the box.
the competition was the question was, which one of Cody and May's abilities that they get throughout the game would you most like to have in your relationship and why? We got tons of great answers. We've got some runners up. The runners up get nothing but your approval and praise on the show. And then we have a winner. Gus, do you want to take the first one?
Sure.
First runner up.
The first runner-up is Sassless, who wrote, "Sure, fidget spinners are cool for flying, but I'd have much more potential to annoy with... Hang on. But I'd have too much more potential to annoy with the magnets." Right, okay, sorry. So they're having a go at the fidget spinners, but they'd prefer magnets. Think you're going to the football alone? Nope. Gonna magnet zoom you right by his side. Rolling all over my side of the bed? Nope. Magnet push till I get the bed all to myself.
Nice.
It's a good move.
So yeah, big fan of the magnets there for some practical uses.
Amazing.
Peter, you take runner up number 2,
Yep. So this was from Silver Leet 1337.
who's in chat right now.
Oh my goodness, Silver Leet, welcome. It's difficult to identify one key ability I'd like to have in my relationship, but I can definitely pin it down to a top 3. I think turning back time would be great so I could reverse the dumb stuff I accidentally say. Cloning myself would be great for, sexy times. Good. Which,
Do you mean with
masturbation.
Yeah, masturbate. I constantly say this to my partner. I'm like, if we could invent cloning, like I would have a threesome with 2 of me and 1 of you, or 2 of you and 1 of me. Like 100%.
No, I just
like,
got the first one with you.
No, totally. Like 10 of me. Let's go. Sorry, Ms. Silver.
Silver wasn't finished, but maybe with a clone he will. And lastly, it's she.
Miss
Sorry.
Silver in the chat.
Hell yeah. And lastly, being able to turn into a cactus would be great for personal reasons. You don't need to know.
There you go.
There you go, Silver. Thank you.
Excellent.
Steph, runner up number 3.
Riotous Lemon is runner-up number 3. who says the cloning ability would be a must in any relationship. I would be able to have a clone of myself at the front door so that when Australia Post arrives each day, I can beat my husband to the front door and hide all of the online shopping packages.
Amazing.
Well done.
Also,
More wholesome than the other one.
Also, I will point out, I'm so sorry, Miss Silver, I attributed the wrong one to you.
Oh, no.
So I will find the person who that was. You're right, Miss Silver. We've accused her of having threesomes
Of
with herself.
wanking a
when
lot.
it's not true. Miss Silver's one was she wanted May's ability to spray water because one of the number one sources of friction in my relationship is that I feel compelled to stay at a restaurant until I finish drinking the free water, much to my partner's embarrassment. With May's ability, I could regulate the amount of water put into my cup with no excess and leave comfortable in the knowledge that I won't die of thirst on the drive home. I'm sure my partner's new embarrassment at me spraying water everywhere would be amusing too, which I thought was such
is
a
good.
weird specific thing that would actually help their
And
relationship.
apologies to whoever's having orgies with themselves.
Apologize for that.
I've got a fourth runner-up. Avexia just asked, what's a relationship?
Relationship.
But the winner is Lyle.
Hey.
Lyle and Lawcat, his partner Lawcat, both watch the show.
Yep.
And Lyle said, out of all the powers that May and Cody get, I would like the power of divorce. Sorry, Lawcat, I have something to tell you.
God, I hope that's shocking.
They did put, just to soften that blow, /S,
Yes.
which is signed for sarcasm.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
But I just loved the idea of like so many shows have a thing where it's like, oh, you met because of like like they watched this thing and that's how they met or
Look at-
whatever.
oh my
And
God.
actually, it's that we would be the first show, like internet show in history that gets a divorce live on air, like announced on air.
Yeah. Let's
so
go to the super screen or whatever they call it. Did you see
Scam.
the kiss scam? Oh,
I like
divorce
divorce
scam.
power. We have the power of divorce.
And so Lyle wins the Pockety Mug and Game Club notebook, and I'm fairly certain he's now going to have to give it to Lawcat.
Absolutely.
So that ends our spoilerific discussion of It Takes Two for this month's Game Club. And with that, we can announce the June game
Yeah,
that we
because
have teased.
we haven't announced it.
but like, officially announce it on.
That's okay. I kind of soft announced it as well, where I was like, this is what we're thinking.
That's what
There's
chat
nothing else
said. We
coming.
were off
Yeah,
the hook
yeah,
immediately.
yeah.
They were like,
So-
Nick already said it.
So you guys have done it, and I've done it, so I think it's only fair that Gus officially announced it. And the June game for the Back Pocket Game Club is going to be
Resident Evil.
Village.
It does sound like it's the
There is Animal Crossing.
Well, this is going to be delightful. I am shitting myself because can I just say I love this format. I love that we finished a game so often. Like it's just hard to finish games. That's part of why we're doing
Yeah.
shame pile stuff. That's been a great way to finish things, and this is awesome. Oh my god, are we going to get to the end of Resident Evil Village? I am terrified.
I know.
I'm such a wimp with this stuff. I'm really looking forward to this game.
I know.
But I'm
And people in chat are pointing out, sorry, I said June, I meant May. So yeah,
Who's going to stream it?
I am taking lead on Resident Evil
Oh my
Village.
gosh, and you had like scaredy pants.
I know, and that's the reason that I legit was like, I have to take lead on this or I will not finish it. Like, I will not... can I give you a piece of advice? I was thinking about how will I play this game if I wasn't streaming it, and I thought, actually, I think PS Remote Play on my phone while I'm sitting on the couch
Not bad.
and like
On the
TV's
beach.
on is probably
Yeah.
the way to do it. On a small screen, it's going to be way less scary.
true.
But I don't have that luxury. I have to play it.
stream.
But at least you will all be there to help me through.
Well, yeah, I was going to say I would have loved to stream it myself because just having an audience and some people to talk to while it's all happening. Whereas no, I'm going to go full, surround headphones, lights off, cat leaping on my shoulder, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but it's going to be cool.
Yeah,
and I
it
can't wait
should
to
be fun.
finish it.
It should be really
Yeah, we've had some people ask, will we be able to finish it in the month? I think we can totally do it. 7 was what? 8 hours or something like that. I can't imagine this is much longer than that.
yeah,
we only
totally.
expect a 10 to 12 hour game.
Yeah, and also like we're doing we kind of do what is it, like kind of 8 to 9 of these streams, and if you do like 3-hour streams, if you did all 8 of them, it's like 24 hours. I imagine it's gonna be like a 12 to 15 hours.
Yeah, this
easy,
format's worked
easy.
well for this game. I think it should hopefully translate it to completing other ones as well.
Such a wildly different game from the one.
I know, right?
So
Which is
different.
So great.
Well, then we've already started dabbling in of thoughts for the game following that, just looking ahead to schedules, which we will not spoil now, but wildly
Because there's
different
25
again.
to 30.
So the idea there is we're going to just bounce between all sorts of genres.
25 hours to 30 for Resident Evil Village.
Whoa.
Oh
I can
my
already tell you, I'm
God.
going to sit on this couch in a month and go, it's too long.
You can be like, this couch has been stained.
Yeah, so
pretty big.
it's fine. We'll figure it out. I'll do
Scratch that 10 hours.
10 hours.
I misread.
That's a huge
Thank goodness.
misread. Oh my good lord.
Yeah, no, like that'll
Yeah.
work.
I was like, there's no how
reading
do you
Animal
make
Crossing.
a 30-hour horror game?
Yeah.
And look, again,
That's too
I hate to
much.
pick the formula apart, but we might eventually hit a game that we want to cover that's 80 hours long or something crazy, and we're just going to play as much of it as we can in that month.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think linear narrative stuff, particularly, we'll really aim for that end point, and yeah, see if we can all make it.
And
30 hours was the biggest scare of Resident
I know, yeah. I think fortunately, we can start playing it the day it comes out.
Yes,
Friday,
the day
May
it comes
7th
out,
will be the first
we will
Game Club
be
stream.
Yeah, exactly. So that we have a stream, our normal streaming day on that Friday, the 7th. We will have the game and we'll be able to start playing it. So yeah, that will be very, very exciting.
Yep.
So thanks very much, everyone, for hanging out and joining us for the first Back Pocket Game Club. Let us know what you thought about the show in the Discord. If you want to become a member of the community, I'm sure you already are. But if you know someone who isn't, then it takes two to become a patron member. We never actually told you this, but in order to not have your membership cancelled by us at the end of the month, you need to bring someone along with you.
Oh, it's like a pyramid scheme.
Yeah,
It's a pyramid scheme.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
exactly
That's what they
yeah,
called it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's when the
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
when
You need
ASIO
to
came
fix your-
around. They were,
Sure.
Yeah, you need to fix your Patreon. Really went the same way.
We will be back with the normal Thursday night show
Yeah.
on Thursday night at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So we'll see you then. And until then, we'll back it out.
See you later, everyone.
We're not backing it out.
No, we don't back out of
We're
it.
back out.
We're backing out. Back out.